Hi, everybody. Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming out. This is so exciting. I'm so happy to be in this space for VOXRVA. We've been kind of moving around a lot. If any of you have followed us from space to space, it's always a little awkward. Our last month VOXRVA event at Vazen Brewery, I had to bring half the chairs because they didn't have chairs there, which was a little nuts. I had to figure out where to find chairs and then wash them all and then bring them all and set them up. Anyway, so I'm very glad to be here. I want to thank Vinny Venuto and his parents. Vinny's cook called in sick today, and so his mom and dad are in the kitchen making all the food that you're enjoying. Is that awesome? And on top of that, Vinny is donating this space. We are not paying a dime to be here, and it is all ours for the evening. So please eat up, drink up. Yes, thank you, Vinny. Thank you. So welcome to VOXRVA. This is our storytelling, our live storytelling monthly event that really is designed to bring people together and create kind of a feeling, and I think this place is perfect for creating a feeling of community and a place where we can all come and hear each other's true stories from the heart on different themes. Thank you for that music. So this month's theme, as you know, is family secrets, and we've got some good stories for you tonight. So without further, wait a minute, a little bit of housekeeping. For the first time, we are doing Venmo contributions. So this is an all-volunteer project. There are several of us who are doing this because we love stories, we love live storytelling. We miss Secretly Y'all, which I wasn't actually even in Richmond for, but I miss it just because I've heard people say how great it was. And TEDxRVA and other things that went away during COVID. So this is an attempt to kind of resurrect that opportunity. So if you would be so kind, it's a free event, so no pressure, no need, but if you want, we would appreciate it. There's also a sign-up sheet at the end of the bar if you want to get our monthly email that lets you know about the next event. Please do sign it with your email. And also, we need storytellers, okay? I'm going to be a storyteller tonight. I do not want to be a storyteller tonight. That's not my thing. I'm a producer. I'm one of those behind-the-scenes people. And my husband is also going to be a storyteller. This shows you how the show must go on. Okay, well, without further ado, we're going to get started. I want to introduce our wonderful MC this evening, Michelle Mercurio, who you probably know, or you might know, from her 10 years as the host of Creative Mornings here in Richmond. I have to read this, I'm sorry. Through strategic coaching, personal branding, organizational storytelling, and facilitated experiences, Michelle helps clients return to who they really are so they can make meaningful progress in their lives and careers. Michelle believes that we can all be a little bit more of who we really are and less of who the world expects us to be. So come on up, Michelle, and take it away.
I'll take that directly from you. Also, Laura, your order is up, and they could not find you for your food. So let's have the priorities in line here this evening. If anybody is missing an order, there you go. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, many of you, I see some familiar faces from Creative Mornings. I was host for 5 years, and I've been on the volunteer team for Eva. And now Meg asked me to host VOXRVA this evening, or MC VOXRVA this evening, because storytelling is such an integral part in who I've always been, and I believe in listening to people's stories. So thank you all for being here tonight. I'm just trying to give Matthew a few more moments to frantically write his notes over there before I call him to the stage. Without further ado, I'm very excited to be hearing some family secrets this evening. I don't know about the rest of you, but my family was pretty boring. I wish that I had a few more secrets to tell, but I know that tonight all of our storytellers have moments where they are going to share from their hearts, and so please always give them a warm welcome. And first up tonight, our first storyteller, Matthew Lindholm. Matthew was put up to telling a story tonight by his beautiful wife, Meg. So we know he is a very good sport. And he grew up in a town called Blue Earth in Minnesota, kind of appropriate for Earth Day as well. If you can believe it, it was right next to a place called Gray Moon. No, I'm kidding. We're just kidding. In his late 20s, Matthew moved to New York City, where he got a Master's of Divinity degree. But he later switched to sociology, which was his true calling. After teaching college classes for many years, he realized he had an even higher calling. That was golf. He's now gunning to be the Jack Nicklaus of the senior set. Is that what you're doing in your time? There you go. Matthew's story tonight is called Family, God, and a Hard Place. So let's all welcome Matthew to the stage. Would you like the... You can use that one. It is on. It looks like it's on. Test. How about I just hand you this one? Hey, guess what? It's on.
Oh, it is on.
Do you want to try that one more time?
Can you hear?
Just take that.
How's it? Whoa. Okay. Well, I was a teacher, so I was sort of on stage a lot when I was, before I retired. So this is a little new to stand up in front of a crowd here. We'll see how it goes. So I can't read my notes, so they're pretty useless, but I may try and read them once in a while. So this is a story about secrets, and a little bit of a flip. It's not so much my family's secrets as it is the secrets I kept from my family, which probably a universal experience, but we each have our own story, I guess. So I grew up in Blue Earth. And I want to start out with a little bit of a background about my family. Very religious family. My father's grandfather and his father immigrated from Sweden, where economics and politics, famine, politics, and religion were all kind of bound up together. My understanding is they had to have the bishop's approval to emigrate to the United States. And they continued to be religious, but they very much broke with the Church of Sweden. So, and they were part of a kind of a pietistic sect. Pietism, I guess, means the individual believer has a direct experience of God, not through a bishop or a preacher or whatever, and that experience is through scripture study, Bible study, and prayer, and community with others aspiring to the same thing. My mother's family, her father was a hell and fire and brimstone minister in South Dakota. And they traveled all over the state because he couldn't get along with his bishop. So he had a hard time holding on to a job. So that was my parents, and they brought that faith forward in their own ways, modified in various ways. The town I grew up in was, well, I don't know, is 4,000 people a small town? I don't know. There are smaller towns, and where I come from, we were the county seat, so major metropolis, actually. Beautiful old courthouse there. So Blue Earth at the time, I went back to my 40th high school reunion, and lo and behold, this was I mean, everybody went to church when I was a kid, but nobody really went to church like my family did. And my parents would never say that other people weren't Christians, but I learned that we were the true Christians. These, you know, all these other, we're Protestants, all these other Protestant denominations, Catholics, etc. Big scandal, my brother dated a Catholic in high school. Horrors, mortification. Actually, my parents did pretty well with it. So when I was growing up, it was a very secular place. School was a very secular place. And if you're from a small town, I don't know if it's this way in other parts of the country or other towns, but school center of community life, families and kids. It certainly was in the town that I grew up in, or that's the world I knew in that small town. Let's see, we got family. Yeah, so my childhood. So what was the religion like, or how did I experience it? 3 times a week, church, Sunday morning. My mother played the piano, and when this little church could afford to buy a inexpensive organ, they did, and she played the organ. We always sat in the front of the church behind the pastor's wife and 2 daughters. Kind of cute, but a lot older than I. And this lovely old Norwegian couple, still with a faint Norwegian accent, sat behind us. And they were very sweet. My pew wasn't as sweet a place to be. Thank you. So Sunday morning service, Sunday evening service, and the sermon was, well, it felt like 2 hours, but maybe sometimes an hour reading an interpretation of a few verses in the Bible. So, that was pretty intense and I sat in that front pew from the age of 3 and 4 and 5. So that wasn't a day when there was a parent room with small children in the back of the church. And then Wednesday night was prayer and a little bit of singing, but mostly prayer and Bible study, not led by the pastor, typically by an elder in the church. And the prayer, most everybody prayed. It's like everybody bowed their heads, or maybe 12 of us. It was a small church. 50 on Sunday morning, max. A dozen on Wednesday nights at prayer and Bible study. And kids were encouraged to pray too. I better save some of the stories for later, but I got more if you want to hear more afterwards. Something about cornfields and foreign fields, but I'll explain that afterwards. So this was the context I grew up in, and that was my childhood. Vacation Bible school, and my grandparents were very religious on both sides, et cetera, my aunts and uncles, et cetera. When I hit adolescence, that's kind of where the rub came. Because, now I mentioned I went back for my 40th high school reunion. The town was much more Christian in the way that I understood Christianity as a child than back in the 1960s and 1970s when I was growing up in that town. So once I hit adolescence, I also was a witness to my brother's circumstances. My brother, my next oldest brother, 4.5 years older, John, this was a kind of town where for the community to work and for the school to work, or at least this is the way it was in our town, you didn't just play one sport, you played 3 or 4 sports all across the sports seasons. And you didn't just play sports, you sang in the choir. If you didn't also play instrument in the orchestra, if you didn't also have a small part or a major part in the school play. So it was kind of all-in sort of thing, no specializing in this town. The kids all kind of did everything. And so for me as an adolescent, there was a lot at stake, desperate for acceptance, approval from peers, teachers. I didn't have I guess my theory, you don't have a strong sense of self as a young adolescent. I certainly didn't. And so I felt very much caught between a rock and a hard place. That is between Jesus, God, my family, true Christianity, and my peer life, where in the locker room I was learning dirty jokes, naughty language. I found out the older kids were all to beer parties on the weekends, not all of them. Well, it felt like if I revealed to people, so this was my secret at school. So we're talking multiple secrets here. My secret at school was I had this family with this kind of what felt to me at the time like a kind of cultish sort of religion, and I didn't want that to be exposed to my peers. And at home, I didn't want it to be exposed. Tremendous emotional risks. I mean, my parents are very serious about their religion. So I didn't want to run the risk of revealing to my parents that I wasn't doing all the things a good Christian boy should be doing in my social life at school and in the wider community. So when I hit about 15, there were beer parties, there were naughty jokes and naughty language, and I kind of wish I hadn't been so exposed to the locker room when I was a kid, but I was. Anyway. So things got tense, and they kind of reached a climax the year I was 15 years old. My parents weren't just focused on church. Really a core part of my parents' faith was you needed to share your testimony and save other souls because, out of love, you don't want other people going to hell, so they need to learn about true religion, right? And so you need to be giving witness to, public witness, be open about your faith and your commitment to that faith. Well, so I hit 15 and I was kind of holding this double life together, this double lie at school and at home. And the year I was 14, 15, my father, he actually led a Bible study to try and expand the circle of love and salvation with the youth in the community. And his father was very much like that, too. His father was very interested in kind of youth Christian movements and sharing the gospel with the youth of today, yesteryear. And so my father led a Bible study, inaugurated a Bible study with some kids that he knew that weren't, and it was non-denominational or interdenominational, where the kids had come to our house on Tuesday nights to study the Bible together, pray together, sing some songs. And this was my dad's effort to kind of widen the circle of salvation. Now, my dad understood that a balding, middle-aged guy with black horn-rimmed glasses probably wasn't the best sell for young people giving their hearts to Jesus. And let me say, too, I think you'll see by the end of the story, I do not mean disrespect to Christian faith of any sort or faith of any sort. I'm just telling my story and how I lived it. So Dad figured, okay, I need to find somebody with some, well, he never would have said this, but sex appeal for young people. And I don't know how he found this guy, but he was an ex-hippie, had dropped a fair amount of acid earlier in his life, and he'd also been part of a commune for some time and so on. He lived in a town 70 miles east. I don't know how Dad found him, but he found him. His name was Paul, after the first apostle, the oldest author of the New Testament, the first, his texts are the oldest ones in the New Testament. I learned later in seminary, more to come. Paul B. Would drive 140 miles round trip Tuesday and lead a Bible study for kids, and it was kind of effective. I mean, long, curly blonde hair. I mean, picture yourself at 16, 17, and this late 20s guy with long, blonde, curly hair, tall, big blue eyes. Okay, he had kind of a crazed look in his eye. Probably from the LSD and other things. But Paul had really, apparently turned his life around. And so he led Bible study that year that I was having this crisis. Really not being able to bear this burden of living two lives and keeping these secrets. Well, after a year of leading Bible study, Paul extended an invitation to my brother, my older brother, John. Oh, and let me just real briefly say that I witnessed the cost of being open about my family's true Christianity in the example of my brother. He was, this small town, he was a key pillar on the offensive line and the football team. And this was a football team that actually won state, made it to the semifinals, got beaten in the semifinals by the team that won state. And this was a huge deal in this small town. Well, after his junior year in high school, he quit the football team so that he could focus on Bible study, leading this youth Bible study group. Our hippie friend Paul would have been out of the picture there. And he was so serious about it, he was teaching himself New Testament Greek because he wanted to read God's Word in original languages. So, pretty guy. Good guy, too. We're dear siblings these days. So Paul extended an invitation to live in a Christian commune that summer that I was 15, just after I turned 15. And I just set up a test for myself, okay? I couldn't bear this double life any longer, and so I decided I'm going to go live in this Christian commune for a month this summer with my brother, and I'm going to hang out with these good Christian, hippie, former acid-dropping people, and I'm going to shore up my faith and my fortitude, and I am going to be open about my Christian faith in my broader public social life. So I spent that summer in Austin, Minnesota. Anybody heard of the Hormel strike in the 70s that some people saw as a harbinger of the future of unions? They had a meatpacking plant there. Anyway, Paul had a house near the meatpacking plant. So I spent the summer getting up early in the morning to study the Bible and pray and sing. These things extended throughout the day. And working in a big communal garden behind the Baptist church where Paul's father had been a pastor. Paul was I think he was an associate pastor or assistant pastor there, but he also had this commune thing going on. So there were other things going on too. Anyway, it was pretty intense, speaking in tongues. I was the youngest by a good 3-4 years in the house that summer. My parents were kind of chill with it because there are other folks involved. That one was a colleague of my father's, and another was a farmer. My dad, his work was with farmers. He was in the agricultural business, and actually I had Mike, the farmer's son who joined the group. He was married in his mid-late 20s. He'd play basketball with me and toss a frisbee around that summer, throw a ball around. So here's the test then. I went home after the end of that experience that summer, and I was going to share the path to salvation with my dear friend Randy. And I decided, well, you can kind of see what the outcome's going to be with the way I framed the decision for myself. And I decided, if I can share that with Randy, then I'm in with my family, with Jesus as my family understood Jesus. If I can't, I'm done. I'm not rejecting that. I think I'm like Huck Finn. I'll tell you more about this story later. Like Huck Finn, I'm going straight to hell, but I'm making that choice consciously because I can't bear this burden if I'm not able to share Jesus and the road to salvation with my friend Randy. So I invited Randy to tennis. We had a great set of tennis courts down at the school, and we played tennis, played a set of tennis, and afterwards, well, I didn't really have any words afterwards, certainly not about salvation, at least as my family understood it. So I relinquished, well, I guess I didn't entirely. I was going to say, well, I relieved part of the burden. And that is, I was all in with social life and school and friends and school life. And yes, eventually beer parties and other naughty things. What happened subsequently? Well, the way I lived the lie at school obviously was keeping it under wraps, what was going on at home with respect to religion. And then with my family, it was really tough because my father, like his father before him, and like my grandfather on my father's side, and like my mother's father, really had a strong belief and faith that the thing to do, the good thing to do in this world was to share the Christian story of salvation and to save souls. And so my father got involved in a movement within the Methodist Church called Lay Witness Missions. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember that, and maybe it was only in my region in the upper Midwest, I don't know, where I went along with other youth. It was for teens. I went with other youth and shared my testimony, a lie, all the way through, and that was very painful because my parents expected that. And so by the time I got to the end of high school and I went off to college, what a relief it is. I don't know if anybody knows the old Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Big relief going to college. Well, and here's kind of the denouement, or the kind of we're winding towards the end of the story here. Yeah, in college I took a class in biblical studies and New Testament course. Of course, it was at a secular school, and my professor was a Bible scholar, and I learned that there are many ways of Scripture, and I developed quite a different understanding of the origins of the Bible and competing meanings within the Bible, also without losing respect, and in fact really deepening my respect for Christian faith. It's just I was learning there were Christianities, and there were other Christianities besides the one that I grew up with. So I was a school teacher for about 5 years. I taught middle school English, Michelle, and who was also an English teacher. And then I wanted to go to, I knew I always wanted to go to graduate school. I loved college, and I really struggled at the start, but I succeeded, and I really enjoyed my studies. Lo and behold, I went to seminary in New York City. And that's where this learning continued. About Christianities and origins of the Bible, competing meanings in Scripture, competing understandings of how we should live, and so on. But, and here's where I got a little revenge on my mother. I love my mother dearly, and I had the good fortune to spend the last 10 days of her life virtually with her every day. But I pulled some mean things in my 20s and 30s. This one's kind of funny mean, I hope. And that is, I would call my mother from New York City, where I was going to seminary, and I would say, "Hi, Mom, it's your youngest son calling from Sodom on the Hudson." And if you know, I don't know how many of you know, for Christians, your Old Testament, for others, the Hebrew Scriptures, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Sin City. I think that's the original Sin City, Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, of course, that was kind of a nasty poke at my mom, but pleasure in it too. So over time, I think I kind of came, as you can see, I came to a reconciliation with Christianity. It's not something I really took to. I didn't become a pastor or anything. I got seduced by Sodom on the Hudson, became a sociologist, taught urban sociology for a number of years, about 20 years. Met Meg in the big bad city, Sodom on the Hudson. And I'm winding down, just trying to remember some of the last of it here. And then this reconciliation with my parents. After my 30s, I think, into my 40s, I was coming to understand better that my parents, they did what they thought and understood to be best. And I wanted to reconcile with that. So we didn't talk about religion much, or politics for that matter. Yeah, my parents got to know our children. We have 2 teenagers now, and I got to be with both of them around their last days and last few years of their lives. And so let me just finish the Huck Finn story and then I'm done. So anybody know the adventures of Huckleberry Finn? And I know there's real controversy about that book today. I'm going to talk about a brief scene early in the novel, nothing to do with today's controversies, I don't think. Tom Sawyer, people know Tom Sawyer, Huck's best buddy, bestie, and Aunt Polly, Tom's aunt. Well, Aunt Polly is a Christian, a bit in the vein of my parents, maybe in spades. That's my phone. I guess I'll take it later. Thank you, Michelle. So Aunt Polly wants to save Huck's soul. And Huck's a pretty forlorn kid. He's got an alcoholic father. He gets beat. He doesn't have a mother figure, really. And Aunt Polly wants to save his soul, and she tells him that he needs to recognize his sin and turn from his sinful ways and come to Jesus, and that really it's a choice between heaven and hell. That if he doesn't get over his sin and come to Jesus, he's going to suffer hellfire for eternity. Well, and Huck's the narrator of the novel, and so he tells the reader, he's thinking to himself, I was thinking about it, and he said, now what about Tom Sawyer? Is he going to heaven or hell? And Aunt Polly says, Tom is going to hell. Now, Tom was a rascal, and Aunt Polly really had problems with Tom. And so then Huck thinks about it some more, and I don't remember whether he told Aunt Polly this, but he thinks to himself, you know what? I love Tom. So I'm going to stick with Tom, even if it means going to hell. And in some ways, I think that's my resolution, is discovering that, that central importance of love and relationships are entirely Christian. And whether I call myself a Christian or not, that's the heart of my road to heaven, I guess, or road to redemption. So that's it.
Phone check for everyone. Thanks so much, Matthew, for sharing that. Am I okay with this mic?
Yeah, keep talking.
All right, fantastic. Our next storyteller is Reese Williams. And this is Steve, everyone. Thanks for all the audio. Reese has been a voice actor for over 25 years. She enjoys this work because it allows her to be obnoxiously animated and yet socially acceptable. She's lent her talent to live radio, animation, mobile apps, messaging, commercials, corporate videos, and singing backup vocals. She's the Chief Communications Officer for Shaco Records, so now she gets to run her mouth about her beloved music community for a living. She hosts the weekly concert series Shaco Sessions Live and its companion podcast, This Room Sounds Great. She MCs events all around town. I wonder if she's ever MC'd VOXRVA. As a matter of fact, she has. So please, without further ado, let's welcome Reese, whose story is called My Secret Sibling.
Hey, everybody. I should actually call it my secret sibling that I actually know. But anyway, okay, backstory. Let's go back to the 50s. My mother got pregnant with me when she was 15. She had me when she was 16. She was being raised by her grandmother. Her mother's mother was learning disabled and was off and on in institutions where at the time they were mandatorily sterilizing people and giving them lobotomies and things of that nature. So my mother was raised by her grandmother and her own mother being in the house, but not really there since she was a little learning disabled. Sweet as pie, but just not very cognizant of the world. And she actually, my mother's mother had a terrible temper based on some of her mental illness. So it was just a very tumultuous household. My mother got pregnant by a man who was 21. He was already married with a baby on the way. He would troll high schools for chicks. That's what he did. He was a cad. Talk about sin. So a tumultuous household. So my mother gets pregnant with me. This is all in Southern Illinois, and she is sent to St. Louis to an unwed mother's home that's run by the Salvation Army. And she's meant to give birth to me and leave me there because she's 15, almost 16 years old. And, you know, this would, not that my family had a high standing, but I guess at that time it was just horrible for this to happen. It just, I mean, we can't conceive of a lot of that now, but back in the early 70s, don't do the math, back in the early 70s, it was still pretty much frowned upon. So my mother goes to the unwed mother's home. I don't know how long she was there, a few months, I guess, the latter months of her pregnancy. And she has me, and she can't give me up. She just, I guess we bonded. I don't know what it was. So she comes home with me. My great-grandmother, her grandmother who she's living with, either goes to pick her up or my mother just shows up back at home and she's got me. And my grandmother, who is my great-grandmother, who's a German immigrant, is, we jokingly say, the angriest woman alive. And think about it. She, emigrated from Germany. She had a philandering husband who was an alcoholic. She's got to raise 7 of her own children, 1 with a learning disability. Then she has to raise her granddaughter. Now, her granddaughter's having a daughter at 16, so she knows she's going to have to raise her great-granddaughter. So just a pressure cooker situation. And my mother was very much shamed that she had this child so young. That's the backstory. So my mother and I live on our own until I'm 6, bouncing back and forth between the great-grandparents and my mother's house. My mother meets a man. They get married. He's my stepdad. He's great. They meet when I'm 6. They have a couple of more children. And my mother's mother, like I said, was a little learning disability, but her father was as well. They met at a mental institution. They were actually supposed to be sterilized. He was supposed to be lobotomized. My grandmother was supposed to be sterilized, but they ran away and they got pregnant with my mom. So my mom was not dealt a full deck in the first place. Bless her little heart. So true. So my mother comes up. My mother is a pathological liar. She's a sociopath. She's got her issues. But she manages to marry somebody when I'm 6. Sweet guy. And we moved from Southern Illinois to Connecticut. So we're moved from our whole family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody. We have a fine life for about 10 years. My stepdad's fine. They have a couple of kids. I have siblings. It's wonderful. And then they divorce. Siblings go to live with their stepdad because my mom's just not capable of raising more children. The judge actually certified, hey, you should not be raising children. Flash forward. Okay, so then I'm 22 years old. I don't speak to my mother. I have no relationship with her based on a lot of the atrocities that she has committed in my childhood. But I still, of course, want to see my little brother and sister who are bouncing back between my mother and father's house or mother and stepdad's house. So at 22 years old, one day I go to drop my brother and sister off, and I see my mom in the house, and she kind of walks by the door, and I was like, looks like mom's gaining some weight. Like, what's going on? And my brother jokes, she's pregnant. And I was like, My sister's like, no, really, she's pregnant. Now, they're 10 and 11 years younger than me. They're little. They're like 11 and 12. They're like, no, really, she's pregnant. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So I kind of brush it off, and then the next time I see her when I'm dropping them off, she's outside, clearly butterball pregnant. Or I guess butterball's usually naked, but she's butterball pregnant. It's like up here. And I said, oh, I hear congratulations are in order. I kind of yell it from the window. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, they told me you're pregnant. I don't know what they're talking about. They're so full of shit. Pathological liar. Huge, pregnant. She's, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go about my life, and about 3 or 4 months later, I'm at work in the warehouse of the Christmas Mouse in Williamsburg, doing my 22-year-old job of putting prices on ornaments year-round. And I get a phone call out of the blue, and they're like, hi, we're looking for Reese Williams. Yeah. This is Williamsburg whatever hospital. Deborah Williams would like for you to be with her. She's giving birth, and she has no one else to call. So I go to the hospital. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what you do. I watched my little brother be born. I was super excited. I just thought it was cool, another sibling. That's great. I never really got information on how it happened. My brother and sister were so little, the details were fuzzy, which is probably better for them to not know the details. But I watched him be born. Was just in shock that, of course, she kept it from us, that you can't reconcile that kind of mentality. So a couple of years later, I decided to move to San Francisco with some friends. It was, when I tell you, the most heartbreaking decision. I mean, forget lovers, forget anything else. When you have to leave siblings who you know are not going to be in the best care, it's really hard. But when you've gone through what you've gone through and you just know you need to flee, you have to flee. So at 24, I went to San Francisco, and my mother made me promise, and my younger siblings promise, everyone in the family, grandma, great-grandma, cousins, aunt, uncle, she made us promise that we wouldn't tell anybody about my brother Alex, because she was so mortified that she had yet another kid out of wedlock. And I was 20 like I said, when he was born, I was 22, and she would threaten, I'm going to run away with him. I'll take him and I'll run away and you'll never see us again. Well, I was petrified. I knew, like I said, the atrocities that she was capable of. Kept it to myself. And my brother and sister were so little, they're like, please don't tell anybody. We don't want to lose our brother. So I didn't tell anybody. And then I moved to San Francisco. Okay, the kid's 2 years old. Haven't told anybody. And then the kid's 4 years old. Then the kid's 8 years old. And I've told no one. And when anybody in the family would call her and they'd hear him in the background, she would just say it was a kid that she was babysitting. And I was living in California, and she was in Virginia, and our family was in Illinois, so nobody could check up on her. Nobody knew. They just thought it was a kid that she was babysitting. And then I would visit from California to Virginia, and I would try to see him. She would try to keep me from him, but my brother and sister would finagle ways that I could see him. So I got to develop a relationship with him. He was sweet, but fucked up, obviously, because he's being raised by her with nobody else around. My brother and sister are kind of going between their dad and her, but mostly their dad, which was great. But this poor kid was left alone with her. And I would call Child Protective Services, and I did some research, and I found out who his dad was. I found out my mother had a one-night stand with a tugboat operator. And so I call him and I say, hey, your son really needs your help. I think he was probably about 4 at that time. And the guy was like, I can't offer him anything. I have nothing to do for him. So I would just go back and forth between Virginia and California, just trying to spend time with him and let him know there was a life outside of their trailer, and, you know, just let him know that I was there for him. And then when I turned 31, 32, I decided I wanted to know who my real father was, because I still didn't know. And in connecting with my biological father, I thought, this kid, he's living his whole life without a family. This is absolutely insane. And at that point, I wasn't taking her threats as seriously. I mean, in the beginning, when your mom tells you she's going to run with the kid, or she's going to hurt him and then herself in very severe ways, and you have younger siblings begging you not to do anything, you just don't do anything. But at this point, you know, the kids were a little older. He was 10, 11 years old at this point, poor kid. And I finally just told her, I said, hey, I'm driving to Illinois to see family, and I'm picking him up. I'm flying to Virginia, I'm picking him up, and he's going to meet his family. And it was shocking how many people actually weren't surprised, because it was my mother. It didn't really surprise them. They were just sad at how much time they had missed. he got to meet aunts, uncles, grandparents, and then several years later, I reached out to his dad again, who was in a much better place. He was married. He was more financially stable. He wanted to have a relationship with him. So now he has a relationship with his biological father, and he has a huge family on that side, which is great because none of us have a relationship with our mother. So he has this huge family. He is now a tugboat operator, and he'll go out for 3 months at a time, and it's on a lot of the Great Lakes. I guess they need a lot of tugboat services on the Great Lakes. I don't know. Luckily, he's not crazy messed up. He's just a little antisocial. He just, I'll text him every holiday, every birthday, everything. He just lives in Matthews County. He's not far, and I'll say, "Happy birthday, little brother," and he'll text back, "Weirdo." Like he's just a dude. He doesn't care about connecting. He loves working on Jeeps. But yes, there was an 11-year period where no one on earth, blood related to us, knew about this poor little boy. And I had to keep it down and do all the workings around it to keep it under wraps until we just let the cat out of the proverbial bag. So sometimes you are the one that knows the secret and you're just not allowed to share. Thank you.
I have so many questions. Like so many questions. You're going to be here a little later, right? Like you can follow up with all of us. Also, by the way, you and Marianne should meet because, okay, anyway. You two probably have some things to share. You'll all hear from Marianne later on this evening as well. So, see, I feel like there's a whole lot of people that want to connect. There might be a new group that's forming out of this. Thank you so much, Reese, for sharing your story. I do have a lot of questions. Our next storyteller is Les Schaefer, and he believes firmly that a good story will get you out of just about anything. Les teaches and tells stories in theater, therapeutic, classroom, and workshop settings. He writes and tells stories that help heal, teach, bring a laugh, or a tear, and sometimes it does all of that in the same story. He has now achieved a life goal of probably being the oldest teller at the mic. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. All right. Les enjoys telling Jewish, Native American, cowboy, personal, and family tales. He's here tonight to tell one of his family tales called A Stone for Francis Milgram. Everybody, please welcome Les to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Lord, Reese, I wish I'd had you when I was a kid in my life. Did I ever need you? Who else was born? Who here was born in 1937? I am the oldest person at the mic today. One of these days I'm going to come up and I'm going to tell a funny story, but I don't think it's this one. Family secrets. The only thing I have of my mother's, and I should have brought it, is a small powder compact that women used to carry in their purses. Maybe some of you still do, I don't know. One side held a little bit of powder, the other side held some kind of makeup thing. And I received it when I was an adult, and not from my mother. It's a hell of a thing to go through life, and that's all you've got of the person who brought you into this world. But that's how it was. And let me tell you a little bit of that story. My dad and I, for many, 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 many years, had a really fractious, angry, tumultuous relationship. He did some awful things. I did awful things in return. was not a happy time. Family secrets. In sick families, family secrets, this is so toxic. My father and the woman who raised me, they bullied, cajoled, forced, threatened well over 100 people in my family to keep a secret. Even my grandmother, who I loved, she kept a secret from me. I lived, in many ways, a kind of a normal life and an enviable life. I'm maybe one of the last generations that was sort of a free-range kid. The small town I grew up in was New York City, had the whole city to run around in, and did. In that respect, it was good. And then there was going home, and then there was being with family. I always knew there was a problem. I always knew something wasn't right. And I knew it, and I was thinking about this morning. I watched my grandfather die when I was 3 years old or 3.5. First time I ever saw someone die, not the last. And I knew then, that night, the night he died, I remember being held by our neighborhood cop who was calling in for the ambulance to come pick up his body while my family was going crazy in our tenement apartment. And I remember thinking, there is something, I didn't even know, I didn't even have words. I just knew something wasn't right. When I was 18 and flunking out of college, my dad woke me up in the middle of the night, because that's when we communicated. He came home from allegedly work late, and if he had something to say to me, he'd wake me up and yell at me. It was his idea of a conversation at the time. And he had seen, my mother had shown him the letter that came from Queens College that if I didn't get my act straight immediately, I wasn't coming back next semester. Which was okay with me, to tell you the truth, but it was awful. I would have been the first person in my family to go to college. I was the first person in my family to go to college, but it took me like 40 years. My dad wakes me up, and he thinks he's trying to help. He thinks he can inspire me to pull it all together. Some of you are shaking your heads. You've had that conversation or heard that conversation. And he tells me, you know, Leslie, Sylvia, my person I thought was my mother, is not your mother. Your mother died when you were born, right after you were born, and Sylvia raised you, and but she's not your birth mother. And he's thinking, he tells me, he's thinking that when I hear that, I will just bust ass to not get flunked out of college just because of what my stepmother did to me. Notwithstanding, she and I had been at war for 18 years, which would be another story. And he finishes up all of this, and he tells me that, families with secrets are so wonderful. And if you grew up with secrets, you've heard this. He tells me, don't tell her and don't tell anyone what I told you. And I keep quiet till the end of that semester. I go away to work for the summer in a country club and kids camp. I do get kicked out of college. I come home. I get a job in Manhattan. We lived in Queens, New York. I worked in Manhattan. And I keep quiet till maybe that October. And my mother and I, my stepmother and I, the one thing we did do together, our only activity that was pleasurable was doing our laundry together, which, when I say it now, sounds a little sick. But that's what we did. We're doing our laundry, and she comes after me because I'm dating, you'll understand this, I'm dating a woman who's not Jewish, or a young woman who's not Jewish. My parents are the least religious Jews you have ever seen anywhere, ever. And they're coming, and she's coming after me for this. And I blow up. 18 years of anger, resentment, suspicion, craziness, just boom. And I unload on her. Within an hour, I've packed up my stuff into 2 grocery bags, and I am walking down the street to the bus stop to leave. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting out of there. And I do leave, and I never go back. I never go back to live with them again, and it was at least 10, 15 years where we really ever spent any time together. And I'm out of there, and I'm now on my own. I keep trying to find out more facts and get very little. I get this compact from my grandmother. She got it when they got rid of my birth mother's stuff. My father and my birth mother had been married. My dad had been dating the woman who's now my stepmother. He was dating her before, met my mother, stopped seeing the other woman, and then when my mother died, they were remarried in like 3 months after my mother died. Whatever that means. And my grandmother had saved one picture of my birth mother and this little compact, and she gave it to me. Well, I am not a happy camper. I am not a well camper. I'm pretty sick and pretty crazy myself. You don't grow up that way without paying a price. And you can almost guess what's going to be. Alcohol, drugs, sex, anxiety attacks, suicide attempts, and thinking about it all the time. Multiple marriages of my own. Every career I try goes down the tubes. And I know when I get to my late 30s, something has got to change. And I start with finding my mother's family, which helps. It's got its own issues, but that helps. I tried for my father to find out where my mother is buried. And he either lies to me about it, sends me all over the East Coast, pretty much, or the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. He's got me everywhere, and he won't tell me where. And I keep after him. We keep trying to reconcile. I keep trying to heal this. One time, my dad and I met him in Washington, and we drove to New York, and for the first time in my adult life, we had a conversation. And I heard from him some of the story, and it was good. And we have this great conversation. I'm thinking, we are finally maybe there? I don't know. But as his car gets up to the George Washington Bridge, if you've ever been there, go around this big curve to go up to the bridge, go over the bridge into Manhattan. As we go up around that curve, he looks at me and says, "Leslie, I can't hear out of this ear. I didn't hear a word you said." And he never refers to that conversation again. I keep trying. He keeps sending me off to places. I need to heal myself. My path to healing took me to Pennsylvania, and a place called Pendle Hill, which was still is a Quaker-operated retreat and learning center. And we sell our family. I'm married. I have children who are beginning teenagers. We sell our house, sell our business here in town, get rid of everything, and move to Pendle Hill for a year. I get a grant. We get a grant to live there. And I'm trying to work things out. What do I do next? Where do I go from here? How do I find some peace? And I decide I got to find my mother's grave. I need to see her. And of course, my father keeps lying. And I started meditating. And I thought, maybe if we do a meditation about this, I can get him to tell me where she's buried in that meditation. Best thing I could think of at the time. And I started doing these meditations. And one day I get into this deep meditation, really, really deep. And I'm visualizing my father and I standing on the edge of a little stream. And it's sort of late afternoon. The sun is off in the west, big and shining. Behind us is the outline of New York City skyline. And I'm dragging my father across the stream. He's older. He's sort of feeble. His feet are not in good shape. We have to cross on these flat stones. He's crouching and screaming, complaining the whole way across. But I keep dragging him, and we get to the other side of the stream. I pull him up the bank, and we're at the edge of a cemetery. And we start searching the cemetery for my mother's grave. And he's just pathetic. I'm in a rage. I'm screaming at him. Do you ever think about her? Did you ever tell her you loved her? Did you ever tell her that she had a son that she never met? And I am just screaming and dragging his ass. And he's getting his grounding here. He's sort of looking, and we're circling this one area, and he goes up to this tombstone that's leaning over, covered in vines and spiky plants and stuff. It hadn't been tended. And he starts crying. And I drop to my knees and start pulling the vines and the prickly stuff away, and my hands start bleeding. And then I see Francis Milgram Schaefer died March 23rd, 1937, like 6 weeks after I was born. And then there's an inscription, beloved daughter, wife, and in big letters, all caps, mother. And we're sitting now, both of us are crying, we're sitting in the brush, and in that meditation, I go back to the stream and take off my socks, get them wet them, bring them back, and I wash my father's feet and dry them off. And then we head back toward that New York City skyline. Well, the next time I'm in New York, I tell my father about this dream. And I'm expecting the brush off. And this time he says, she's buried at Riverside Cemetery in Lodi, New Jersey. And apparently I described the cemetery pretty accurately to him. A little while after that, my daughter, Lael, who a couple of you know, she and I go to the cemetery, and we find the grave. tilted over. It's not in her family's plot. Her family has a big plot there, as it turns out. She's outside of that, which is another family story I don't know about. But there is this, and it's overgrown. All we got the number. We had the number of the grave from the office, and it's all overgrown. And we pull off the vines, and we pull off the sticky things, and my hands are bleeding. And it says, Francis Milgram Schaefer, carved into the stone, died March 23rd, 1937. And at the bottom, carved, all caps, M-O-T-H-E-R. I don't know, some of you here may have known, there's a well-known Richmond psychologist and author and teacher, Ev Worthington, who talks about forgiveness being necessary for health. And it was necessary for me to forgive my father and my grandmother and my stepmother. Although to the day she lived to be 86 or 96, to the day she died, she believed my father had made a mistake in telling me. She'd have kept the secret. But forgiveness. My father, my stepmother, we were together one last time at a hospital in Queens. He had several strokes and was in a coma, and the hospital was refusing to follow his directive to have the machines turned off. And my stepmother had to make the decision whether to fight that or not. And I thought she was right. It was her husband. Although other people in the family felt otherwise. He wasn't coming back. So in the end, my stepmother and I stood together. And we got the docs finally to do what they were supposed to do and let my father go. And I held him when they unplugged the machines. His body was just so stiff. And you could tell, just knotty with pain. And when they unplugged the machines, his body relaxed. And later that night he went. I guess he had, I don't understand his reasons, but I guess he had them. Weirdly, despite how much destruction that secret caused my family and me. Well, I have two cousins, a niece and a nephew, two different parts of the family, who don't know who their father is. And their parent won't tell them. So the secrets just go on and on and on. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I feel like there are even more questions. Les, thank you so much for sharing that story. Our next to last speaker this evening is a friend of mine, and I am pleased to hear her story this evening as well. Marianne Marvell, isn't that the best name? Is a systems strategist who brings clarity to complexity, both in the work that she does and in the life that she has navigated. A business advisor by day, she is also a mother of two, one human and one fur. She has a strong passion for helping others not only shine, but to consistently grow into their glow. She focuses on how stories we inherit may shape who we become, but they don't have to define what gets carried forward. This is a very true statement for her. Tonight, she shares a personal story about family, truth, and the impact of what remains unspoken in All Secrets and No Family. So please, let's welcome Marianne to the stage. We can use this too, yes.
Perfect.
For you.
All right, can you hear me? Does that work? Whew, okay, so this is my first time speaking personally. I speak for work. I do webinars, presentations, all the things. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, I'm virtual all the time. So standing here in front of you this evening, coming after so many incredible stories, is a big stretch for me. But I'm really, really, really excited to be here with you. So forgive that I'm going to use my note cards, and I'm probably not going to give you near as much history as you're going to want. I'm very accustomed to having a PowerPoint presentation behind my head. And as I go through this, you're probably going to wish that I had a mind map, because you're going to be like, wait a minute, didn't you just say? So just hang with me. We'll get there, I promise. And I hope you enjoy. Okay. I left the hospital with my name on my birth certificate belonging to a man who wasn't even the possibility of being my biological father. And everyone knew that, except me. My mother was 16. As we've heard, the story continues. There were two likely possibilities at the time, though honestly, there's probably a few more. And neither of them is the name that's on my birth certificate today. I grew up in that family, the one whose name I carried. The one everybody else knew wasn't actually mine. And no one said anything, not to me, until I was 12. And once I knew, everything changed. I had to move. I was not allowed to stay in the same place that I had been raised. It all had to shift because that secret came to light. I was sent to live with my mother, who left the first time when I was 4 and the second time when I was 7. She had remarried and now created a family of her own. But because I knew the truth, everything changed for me with the family that I had grown to love and thought I belonged in. There's a lot of other stories that probably go with that, but we would lean that into a whole nother segment. So some of the details are left out on purpose because we could be here for days. But I found out there was another father, my biological one, another family, his family, a whole group of people who had known about me my entire life, but whom I've never met. Just to add another layer to it, my 16-year-old mother and my 18-year-old, what turned out to be my biological aunt, were also having relations with the same man at the same time, who could have been one of the two options that resulted in a child that got adopted that I didn't learn about until she was 40, that could have been my sister, ended up being my cousin. I love you. Oh my gosh. So this wasn't just one secret, okay? As we know, as we've heard here tonight, it's a whole ecosystem of them. I didn't realize it then, but I was already living inside a pattern that I would spend years trying to break. When I finally met the new family, the biological one, I thought, okay, we shifted from one space, we were in this new space, this is gonna work, this is where I belong. Yeah, it didn't quite work like that. The moment I stepped into that truth, I was forced to lose the other family. I wasn't allowed to see my granny anymore. Aunts, uncles, cousins, gone. It was like I didn't exist. No holidays, no visits, no connection, just cut off. When my granny passed away, I wasn't permitted to attend her funeral. I did sneak in the back and put a rose in her casket. I didn't pay any attention to what people were doing, but that was still the rule. On the biological side, I wasn't fully in there either. I didn't get a new last name. They simply introduced me as his daughter. That still remains today. I was theirs, but not completely. And back in the family I grew up with, I became something different too. Not a sister anymore, a half-sister. And that was a really big shift, especially after my mom had gone and I became mom for a while. And then Nana moved into sister, and then now I've moved into half-sister. There was jealousy, there was tension, there was competition, there was all of these things that were happening with all of these other people. And I just kept feeling like I had done something wrong because now I knew the truth. It didn't stop there. these people like to fool around. So there was another child, this time by my biological father, 18 years my junior, another secret. He knew nothing about me, but he did know about my dad's girlfriend and her children. And then when I actually went to find him, it was a whole lot of drama to bring him into my life and into my family. But I wanted to try to keep making those connections. So I did what I thought made sense. For anyone that knows me, I tried to fix it. I spent decades trying to connect all of it. Different last names, different people, trying to make something that felt like a family. And then I had my daughter. I really believe that would be the thing that brought everyone together. It would allow a reason for things to finally work, a way to have a reset, a new connection, a new space to connect all of these parts and people, all these parts and pieces, and the people that could come together and love something now communally. I introduced her to everyone. I reached out, I showed up, I created parties and family gatherings and all of the things, and I waited for something to change, and it didn't. They treated her the same way they treated me. I saw it in her face and her mannerisms. The same quiet confusion that I recognized on the inside, I now saw happening with my daughter. Stephanie's known me since 10th grade, so I love her. And that's when it started to click for me. This wasn't about connection. I had to accept there was no family, and that was no longer a secret. At some point, I stopped trying to create that family that didn't exist, and I started recognizing the one that I was building on my own. It was very small, it was very limited, but it was chosen, and it was very, very real. And I realized every time I brought my daughter into those spaces that didn't welcome her, those spaces that didn't fully embrace her, those spaces that didn't make her feel like family, I was repeating the same thing that I had lived through. Not in the same way, but in the same pattern. And I didn't want that for her. Not even a version of it. I stopped putting her in places that couldn't hold her. And I want you to know she's fabulous. She's at Purdue. She's majoring in aerospace engineering. She's not worried about family, and she's making her way in this world. But I stopped asking those people to become something they had never been and started protecting what we did have. Not trying to expand it anymore, but to protect it. We tend to believe that telling secrets is what changes everything, that if we say it out loud, if we put words to it, if we try to define it, if we put it out there, that everybody's going to think, oh, this is going to make the change, this is going to make everything better, this is going to do all of that. It didn't do any of those things for me. Honestly, you have to ask your question, like, was it better to know or not know? I got a whole bunch of people, but I never got a family until I started making my own. So that wasn't my experience. Nothing changed when secrets are told. Healing didn't come from telling everything. And I go back to this. It comes from choosing what continues, choosing what stops, and choosing what we carry forward. And in that, I created something very, very different. I have an incredible group of friends who function as my family. Coming into this age has allowed me. 50 is freeing, people. It's just freeing. It's just coming to this space where I'm like, I can choose where I spend my time. I can choose where I give my love. I can choose where we do these things. And it's powerful. So not from the stories I was given, but from the choices I made, I chose a different way to define family. I call it create circles, not cycles. And that's what I'm walking into the next phase for. Thank you for your time.
Every single time you say something, I learn something new about you. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Marianne. Our final speaker tonight may not be using this, so I'm going to move it. I'm taking the microphone here. Meg Luther Lindholm. Meg is a longtime radio and podcast producer for public public stations like VPM and WNYC. She has lived all over the country. First in New York City, we heard about that earlier tonight, then California, back to New York, then Fargo, North Dakota, and she blames her husband for that one. She now lives here and plans to put her feet up and stay for a while. She loves producing stories and creating projects like this one, VOXRVA. She is grateful that this community connects her with so many groovy, creative, and smart people. She is the mother of 2 teens and 2 ornery cats, all of whom alternately love and hate each other. Meg's story is called Dad, Who Are You Really? Please help me welcome our wonderful host and creator of VOXRVA, Meg, to the stage.
I don't know. After all those great stories, I've kind of forgotten mine. This is really great. Marianne, thank you. Marianne did this on like 2 days' notice, and I'm just so appreciative. I'm up here because I was worried we weren't going to have stories, and it's like the show must go on. That's why Matthew agreed to tell his story. So next time, you all, I hope some of you will sign up. Anyway, okay, let me gather my thoughts. My name is Meg Luther Lindholm. Lindholm is my married name, so I'm an honorary Swede. Thank you. I have no connection to Sweden whatsoever, except through Matthew. Luther is my name. That was my father's name, so it was my name when I was born. And my father, he was an only child. He had 2 parents, but that was it, like no other family. Grew up in Brooklyn. That was it. I grew up really with my mother's family. My mother had more family. There was an aunt, an uncle, cousins, my grandmother, who I was very close to. We'd spend summers in Connecticut with her. We'd all be like together, and my father would be there, and he just, kind of came along, and we celebrated all the Christian holidays, Christmas, Easter. We went to Riverside Church in New York City, if you've heard of that. My father loved going to church. He loved the beauty. It's a magnificent church with gorgeous stained glass windows. He loved the choir, the sound. Oh my God, the Spirit was in that church through the music. And he loved it. And he really loved the ministers. And we went, and, that was my life growing up. It was fine. I didn't think twice about any of it. Until I got to be in my 20s, and I started to wonder, like, who is this guy, my father? Like, what, I don't really know much about his origins, his family. And, to his credit, I think he told me kind of what he knew, which wasn't much. His parents had emigrated to Brooklyn from Ukraine. My grandmother, and I don't know anything at all, he didn't know anything about the circumstances, but she came to within an inch of her life in Ukraine. This was kind of way back during the Russian Revolution, and everybody was killing everybody. And my grandfather somehow got them to Odessa, which is a port city, and they got on what my father said was the last British ship to leave Ukraine after World War I. And they sailed to Constantinople, which today is Istanbul. My grandfather worked as a waiter in Istanbul to earn the passage to then be able to sail from Istanbul to Ellis Island and then to Brooklyn. My father, and they settled in Brooklyn, and it was like, that's it. We're done. The old country is over. We are sight set forward We're learning English, we're working, we're making our way, we don't need to know anything or anyone in the old country. So, my father said, I don't know more than that. That's like the sum total of his knowledge of his family history. I was like, okay, but what religion were they? Well, I don't know. They didn't have a religion. They were secular. They didn't go to church. They didn't go to synagogue, nothing. I was like, but Dad, everybody had a religion at some point. Nobody had everybody had a religion. Like they must have been something, come from some tradition. Well, no. I kept getting this kind of no, I don't know, no. They were just secular. There was nothing. There was no religion. And I found this really kind of frustrating. It kind of went around in circles, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And, part of me wanted to believe him, and part of me was like, I don't know. And so I did what a lot of people were doing. I'm in my mid-20s at this point. And I went on FamilySearch.org. And I just typed in their names. And up come these census documents, government forms, from, Family Search, if you don't know, is the big Mormon operation. They digitize millions of government documents for everybody all over the world so you can learn about your ancestry. So I remember the day I saw these census forms for my grandparents come up. I was with Matthew. We were at a Sky Zone in Fargo, North Dakota. Our kids were playing, and I'm sitting there with my laptop. And I'm looking, and there's, Abraham Luther, Mary Luther, their address in Brooklyn. Language spoken, Yiddish. Oh, Yiddish. Yiddish is a Jewish language, right? It's kind of a mix of Hebrew and German and a couple other languages mixed in, stir the pot, create a language. That's Yiddish. But what was even more shocking to me than that, although that was all I needed to know, like that was my proof right there. My grandparents were Jewish. I had been asking the wrong question. It wasn't what religion were they, it was what was their ethnic heritage, right? That one he would have had a harder time getting around. But what was a little more shocking to me than seeing that he had always said they spoke Russian and Ukrainian in the home. No mention of Yiddish. So what was even a little more shocking to me was when I looked down at my father, who's listed under them, instead of Michael Luther, which is how everybody knew him, how I'd always known him, it was Meyer Luther. And I was like, Meyer Luther? What? Like, this is making no sense. I remember, Matthew, come over here, look at this. It was just kind of wild to see that my father had been given a completely different name that I knew nothing about. I went to my father and I said, Dad, I know that Grandma and Grandpa were Jewish. And he was like, okay, yeah. I was like, wait, what? Like, what? Why didn't you just tell me this? He's like, well, I didn't care. I was like, okay, but I cared. Why didn't that register with you, given that I asked you like 50 times, 50 different ways? Okay. No. At least he didn't deny it. He knew he couldn't deny it. Like that would have really, I don't know how he would have responded if he'd tried to pretend that the government documents were wrong. So, okay, end of story, right? I find out. Oh, and I submitted a DNA sample to Ancestry. Found out, yeah, he's 100% Jewish. I'm 50% ethnically Jewish. The Jews lived so isolated for so long, that they are actually, in terms of DNA, classified, categorized, there's a Jewish thing, genetic inheritance. Okay, so I have found the answer to my question. We're good. I'm good. I go off, live my life. Fast forward a few years. I'm standing in my godmother's home. My godmother, Jean, good friend of my mother's from college, lives in Concord, Massachusetts. And we're in her kitchen, and she says, "Is there any truth to your father being adopted?" I don't know. I have no idea. That's a new one on me. And I'm like, I'll get back to you. So I'm like, shit, what do I do with this one? I go to my father and I say, "Hey, Dad, rumor has it, circulating around the East Coast, that you were adopted. Were you?" "No, I wasn't adopted." Okay. My godmother, she's very Christian. Like, lying is not in her DNA. She would not make this up. This is not something she would do. Like, he's like, okay. I'll tell you why she might think that. I was having a major argument with my grandmother, and I know my grandmother, his mother, was a very fierce little woman. And in the heat of anger, she said, and my father's relating this to me, she said, "Well, it doesn't matter because you were adopted." And my father interpreted that as, she's just being tremendously mean, spiteful, and horrible. And I'm like, okay. What do I do with that? I mean, I don't know. It's possible. Could be true. I knew she was the way, that she could actually say something like that out of sheer meanness. He, just as a small aside, he came home in high school with a C in typing, and she took his type and she threw it down the stairs. Is the mic working okay? Are we needing some help? A little higher like this? What? On the mic? Oh, like that?
Don't hold it at the bottom.
Oh, like that. Oh, thank you. Okay, got it. Whew. All right, so you all heard me on that, right? She was a spiteful, mean woman. And she could have said something like that in the heat of anger. Yeah, you were adopted. So I'm like, all right, this is bigger than me. I need help. So a friend of 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 a friend was a genealogist, aspiring genealogist. She thought this whole story about my father and wanting to find out if his parents were really my parents, or his parents were really my biological grandparents, or if there were other biological grandparents, was really interesting. So she took on my case. And like 3 years and 10 million centimorgans later, centimorgan is a unit of DNA, genetic material. She called me up one day and she said, "Guess what?" You have a very high match with a guy, a man, I think is likely your half uncle. This would have been your father's half brother. And his father, this is a guy named Sherman Price, his father, David Price, lived in Brooklyn, not too far from where my grandparents lived. So I don't know if there was some kind of connection there. But she's like, I think, I have figured out your biological grandfather was this man, David Price. because you and Sherman had his DNA uploaded to Ancestry, so she was able to match us through that. So she knew that Sherman and I were a very close match. And Sherman had a daughter who I connected with, and she and I have become friends. And I was like, so tell me about this guy, David Price, my biological grandfather. Like, who is he? And she's like, oh, he's a real asshole. He was a gambler. He was a philanderer, hence my father. He got fired as a building inspector in Brooklyn for taking bribes. He was married. He and his wife had 3 children. One of them born the same year as my father. So he was a very busy man. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to know this. Thank you. And I'm like, okay, well, now I know. I don't know, still to this day, I don't know who my biological grandmother is. I'm thinking of actually just paying money to hire somebody who really, can dig and figure this out. But I didn't go to my father with this knowledge. And I realized that, I think when I look back and I think about the whole Jewish question and him not telling me, I think there were 2 things. I think he really did erase being Jewish from his identity. He wanted no part of it, and it seriously did not matter to him. So when he said that to me, it doesn't matter. Well, I was so incensed, but in hindsight, I realized, no, it really didn't matter to him. So why should it matter to me? The other piece, I think, is I think he wanted to protect me. I mean, I don't know. He didn't say this, but I think, I was at the gym just 2 days ago, and I'm walking out, and there's a bulletin board that I always just look at, see what's up there. And there was this flyer I hadn't seen before. And it said, Charlottesville, 2017, anti-Semitism at the crossroads of hate. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I know anti-Semitism is alive and well, but to see it like in bold letters like that, right when you're relaxed coming out of a swim, I was like, I think he didn't want me to ever suffer, or that's what I would like to believe. If I didn't know, then I would never have to run the risk of being a target. So I have come, as Les was talking about forgiveness, I've come to forgive him for holding back on this information, which for so many years really irked me. And likewise, when it came to whether or not to tell him what I had discovered in terms of my biological grandfather, his biological father, I never told him or my stepmother, because he grew up with only 2 people, his mother and his father. There was nobody else. And I just felt like I wanted to protect that. I wanted to protect his sense of self. And so I held the secret. And you're the only ones who know. So don't tell. Thank you. And that's actually our show. I don't think we have anybody else. It's gone by so quickly. Here I was thinking all day, oh my gosh, it's gonna, whatever. But it's been really, really fun. So I thank you all for coming out. I want to thank Michelle, our wonderful host with the most. I want to thank our storytellers, Matthew and Les and Reese and Marianne. You're all wonderful. I want to thank my partner in crime, Steve Lack, who's also a wonderful audio person. Oh, and he's, whoops. Are you pointing to the sign-up sheet? Yes. If you want to find out about our upcoming events, please, at the far end of the bar over there, there's a sign-up sheet. Please add your name to it if we don't already have it, so we can make sure to send you notices. Our next event will be May 21st here. The topic is resilience, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we want to hear stories of mental health challenges people have faced and how you have dealt with them and come through them.